The announcement of the first phase of Donald Trump's proposed peace plan between Israel and Hamas set off a wave of anticipation and uncertainty across the Middle East and beyond. While the initial declaration carried dramatic promise, the imminent release of all hostages, the withdrawal of Israeli troops to an agreed line, and the beginning of a ceasefire, the reality of implementing such a plan proved far more complex. Behind the celebratory tone of Trump's statement lay a labyrinth of conditions, calculations, and competing interests that would determine whether the fragile framework could evolve into a durable peace. The details of the agreement, as revealed through diplomatic sources and media reports, outlined a phased process beginning with a cessation of hostilities. Both Israel and Hamas had committed, at least on paper, to an immediate ceasefire monitored by international observers under the supervision of Egypt and Qatar. The first phase required Hamas to release around 20 living hostages, primarily women, elderly individuals, and those in need of medical attention. In return, Israel would release approximately 1,700 Palestinian prisoners, a number that included minors and individuals detained without formal charges under administrative detention. This exchange was designed not only as a humanitarian gesture but as a confidence-building step, signaling that both parties could act in good faith under global scrutiny. Following the exchange, Israel would begin a phased withdrawal of its ground troops from densely populated areas of Gaza, repositioning them along a defined security corridor. This line, negotiated with U.S. mediation, was meant to prevent further incursions while allowing humanitarian agencies access to areas previously sealed off during the military campaign. For the first time in nearly 2 years, aid convoys were expected to move freely through designated crossings, delivering food, medical supplies, and fuel to hospitals and shelters devastated by months of bombardment. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, along with the World Health Organization and the Red Cross, prepared rapid deployment plans to address urgent medical and nutritional needs. For many international observers, this phase represented a critical opportunity to alleviate the catastrophic humanitarian conditions in Gaza. Yet, beneath the optimism ran deep skepticism. Israel's leadership remained divided over the decision to accept the terms of the ceasefire. Prime Minister Netanyahu faced intense pressure from his right-wing coalition partners, some of whom accused him of surrendering to terrorism. Hardline ministers argued that halting military operations before achieving the complete destruction of Hamas would merely give the group time to regroup and rearm. On the other hand, families of hostages and segments of the Israeli public viewed the agreement as a necessary compromise to save lives and bring closure to a prolonged national terror. The conflict between Israel and Hamas has remained one of the most deeply entrenched and emotionally charged struggles in the modern Middle East, rooted in decades of territorial, political, and religious disputes. Its latest and deadliest phase began on October 7, 2023, when Hamas, the militant organization that governs the Gaza Strip, launched a surprise and unprecedented attack on southern Israel. Thousands of rockets were fired into Israeli towns and cities, and heavily armed gunmen infiltrated Israeli territory through breaches in the border fence. The attack left approximately 1,200 people dead, most of them civilians, and resulted in the abduction of about 251 individuals who were taken hostage into Gaza. Israel's leadership, under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, swiftly declared that the country was at war and vowed to dismantle Hamas's military and political capabilities completely. The Israeli response was immediate and immense. Within hours, the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, began airstrikes targeting what they described as Hamas command centers, weapon depots, and tunnel networks across Gaza. The bombardment expanded into a prolonged and devastating campaign that saw entire neighborhoods flattened, hospitals and schools reduced to rubble, and hundreds of thousands of people displaced. By late 2023, Israeli ground troops had entered Gaza, dividing the strip into operational zones and focusing on the destruction of Hamas's infrastructure. Over time, however, the campaign grew increasingly controversial. While Israel insisted that its objective was to eliminate a terrorist threat, international observers, humanitarian agencies, and several governments accused it of disproportionate use of force and potential violations of international law. Civilian casualties mounted rapidly, and by early 2025, the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza claimed that over 67,000 people had been killed, a figure that included thousands of women and children. The humanitarian crisis deepened as Gaza's infrastructure collapsed, electricity grids were destroyed, hospitals ran out of supplies, and clean water became scarce. International pressure began to build for a ceasefire and a return to negotiations. The United States, under President Donald Trump, once again emerged as a central player in Middle Eastern diplomacy. Having previously touted his administration's Abraham Accords as a breakthrough in Arab-Israeli relations, Trump sought to position himself as the architect of a new peace deal that could end the bloodshed and restore stability to the region. By mid-2025, with the war entering its second year, diplomatic channels between the United States, Egypt, and Qatar intensified. These countries had long served as mediators in negotiations involving Hamas and Israel, given their unique relationships and leverage with both parties. Egypt shared a border with Gaza and had historically acted as a gatekeeper for humanitarian aid and ceasefire talks. Qatar, Maya.